Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's webinar, Copilot in Excel, Faster Insights and Analysis, presented by Microsoft Certified Trainer, Albert Kirkpatrick. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting and moderating today's session. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you via email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use our chat for our short Q&A after the presentation. Microsoft and Educate 360 are so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it right over to you, Albert.
Oh, thank you so much, Mariella. Thank you. I am very, very excited to be here, and I'm excited to share with all of you. Copilot is one of the coolest things I've had a chance to deal with in my 30 plus years of technical training. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to share. And what I want to do is take some of the tips or some of the things that in my kind of traveling around and talking to customers and from Microsoft, some of the things that I've seen them doing, some of the situations that they've run into, and I think they might be valuable and applicable to everyone. So before we get started, I want to just once again share how universal Copilot is. Copilot has value regardless of the role you're in. Many of us who are here working in Excel, we're looking at it from an analytical standpoint and so on, but Copilot has ramifications across all the different aspects that we have within our organization. So whether you're in sales or marketing or R&D or comms, or you're a business analyst. I was just yesterday looking at a seminar or webinar that our chief communications officer was putting out about using AI in communications. So you're going to be seeing Copilot in literally every aspect of your environment. You're probably somewhat familiar with what Copilot is, but I always want to make sure that if you're very brand new, maybe you haven't had a chance to get your feet wet with Copilot, and you're still a little apprehensive about, well, what is it and how's it going to help me, or how does it really work? It seems kind of too good to be true. Well, really, what it is, it's just an ability for you to be able to take a set of data, a set of models that are able to take your regular language and turn it into actionable things. That's kind of the differentiator between what we're using Copilot for and what we use, say, Search for. Copilot is really acting like an assistant, like someone that's going to not just go out and find things for us, but walk alongside us as a collaborative partner in getting work done. So if we approach talking to Copilot that way, or approach interacting with Copilot that way, then we're really then optimizing how Copilot can best interact and best serve us. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be appropriate, I think, or I wouldn't say appropriate. That's not the right word. It wouldn't be a session like this if I didn't take a moment to address what the somewhat, maybe not the elephant, maybe the small hippopotamus in the room, which is, okay, can I trust this? Is it secure? Am I sending my information to Microsoft, and are they going to take our organization or my personal data and do something with it? The short answer to that is no, it isn't. It's a completely contained environment. The models and how we train it to be able to understand your language, understand who you are, understand what you're doing, understand like the language that you use, that comes from us. But in an organizational environment, Copilot lives where you are in your day to day. It lives in the space where you're interacting with it. It doesn't have any exposure to things that you don't actually share with it. So don't feel apprehensive that you're compromising yourself or compromising your information or your personally identifiable information anyway by using Copilot. You're just not. Okay. All right. So I want you to close your eyes. Okay. And I want you to imagine that I can grant you 2 extra hours a week. Okay? 2 extra hours a week. What would you do with them? Think about that. If you have a good idea, you can put it in the chat. But what would you do with 2 extra hours a week? More importantly, think about all the things you use Excel for. what would you do or what would you want it to do now that maybe you're not able to do with it as easily as you would like? So, how can I save time? How can I save an extra 2 hours a week in my day? And how can I take Excel and leverage it to do things besides maybe what I want to do, what I do now? If I could give those tasks to a magical assistant and have them do those things for me to save me that time, what would you want it to do? And if you have some ideas, you have some things you're thinking about, put those things in the chat. And, we want to see, I want you to feel like, this is a dynamic, interactive kind of session. The real power of Copilot is using it to work with your own information. I'm going to show you some things, but really what you want to be able to do is take that and use it to build your own interactive experiences with Copilot. So I encourage you, if you've got a spreadsheet that you've been wrestling with for the past couple of days or weeks or even longer, and bring it up and let's take a look at some of the things that we're doing in this demonstration and see if we can apply them to what you're doing in your actual work right now. So that's the idea. And Copilot is cool like that because you can't really break stuff with Copilot. Well, that's not a challenge, but it doesn't really require any permanent or consistent change. It doesn't expose you in any way to like loss. It's really just there's an assistant and there's an option for you to be able to perform things that you do now better and faster. So remember, we want to save 2 hours and we want to be able to give Copilot some capability. Using Copilot, want to gain some capability with Excel. Maybe we didn't think about, maybe we don't have the ability to do now. All right. So think about those things, fix them in your mind. Okay. You got them? All right, good. Okay. So, how do I get Copilot to do that? Well, the key thing to get Copilot to do that is you have to be able to craft an effective prompt. This is the kind of the expertise, and this is where repetition is going to help you. A lot of us, when we start working with Copilot, the hardest thing that we have is trying to get it to understand what we want to do. As a parent of teenage and young adult kids, I know that sometimes you think that you are communicating something effectively, and the results you get are not exactly the results you want. So you wind up having to iterate that over and over again. Copilot is a little more sophisticated than maybe my kids, but the same kind of idea applies there. The more specific, the more clearly I define my objectives, the more likely it is for me to get what I want after fewer iterations. What we've discovered is really an effective prompt has four good parts: a goal, context, sources, and expectations. What is it that I want Copilot to do? I want to define that expectation first. I want to specify why I need it done. The same statement in different contexts could have different outcomes that we're looking for. What information or samples do I want Copilot to use? And how should Copilot respond to fulfill the request? Whenever you don't provide something tangible or grounded in something specific, you're asking Copilot to interpret. And it's like giving an artist artistic license in some area. Copilot will understand, kind of based on its modeling, what it approximates what you want, but it may be slightly off. And that may require you to do multiple iterations to get that. So, for example, you may have something like, okay, summarize monthly sales data. Okay, so I've got a spreadsheet, sales information. I want to summarize that monthly sales data. What is the context for that? I need to understand regional performance and identify any issues with product returns for our upcoming product review. So now, summarizing the data has a context for how I want that done. I'll give it the spreadsheet that I'm going to use. Here's my Excel spreadsheet, the overview spreadsheet that I have. And what do I want Copilot to give me as output? In this case, I wanted to create a table. a table that summarizes trends in a chart comparing sales by region and flagging any anomalies for product returns. That's the idea. This is the concept or the process that we want to use for that. Okay. So the final prompt looks like this. Summarize monthly sales data from Excel, the Excel file Q3 sales overview.xls, highlight any trends in regional performance, flag any anomalies in product returns, and present the findings in a table and include a chart of sales by region. That's an effective prompt. Sometimes when I show that to people, they think that's a little too wordy, but just like any kind of communication, the more I give the recipient of what I'm trying to say, the more likely I am to get the response I want. That's my goal, is to get the response I want as effective as possible. All right. So what are some sample prompts? Let's go over a couple. Okay. So here's a scenario. Imagine you're a data analyst. Your manager hands you a spreadsheet with monthly sales figures and says, we've been growing, but I can't tell which months were our best or worse. Can you help me spot trends and make it obvious to me based on that? Based on that. All right. So the prompt I'm going to use is this one. Based on monthly sales, based on the monthly sales table in this worksheet, generate a formula, calculate month over month sales growth rate, and insert it into a new column in the table called growth rate percentage. So I have an Excel spreadsheet. So this is that spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet, and this is that you can see it's got sales data, probably about 600 rows worth of data that go from the 2017 through about 2026. So it's just sales data, sales date, year, month, region. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that prompt and I'm going to ask Excel, go ahead and analyze that. Okay. So while that's running, what's it actually going to do? Well, what it's doing is it's going in and it's figuring out from context, from the labels that I have, what's my sales information. It's going to come up with a formula to figure out how to calculate what my sales trends are. And then it's going to add that as another column or give me the opportunity to add that as another column. What you should see is two cool things. Number one, it'll tell me the formula that it uses and it'll explain it to me. Side note, that's another really powerful feature of Copilot in Excel. You often get spreadsheets from people and they have formulas in them and you have no idea what that formula does. You can click on a cell with a formula and then just ask Copilot, can you explain to me what this formula is doing step by step? But in my answer, you'll see, coming all the way down here to the bottom, that it creates this formula. And I'll expand that out a little bit so you can see it a little better. All right. So here's the formula I'm going to create. I clicked a little show explanation and you see it breaks down the entire formula, telling me exactly what it's doing. That looks like a lot. It looks pretty busy, but now I'm getting an actual explanation of what the formula does. It then shows me the formula that I'm using for this. Now, oftentimes, because of just the variety or variations that we have, it might not give us an appropriate formula, or the formula not be correct. I might look at this and say that formula is not correct. I could just tell Copilot, that formula did not work. Can you try a different one? And then it'll come back and it'll try and it'll recognize, it'll say, usually it'll be friendly and say thank you, but then it can go back through that and it can say, okay, I'm going to look at that again and try it again. I ran this formula a little bit earlier and it came up with a different formula, and I saved that so I could show it to you. It came up with a different formula, a different calculation, and actually that calculation was actually a little bit better. So you can see here, it's actually showing me I'll zoom in a little bit. It's showing me my growth rate a little more accurately than this formula did. So don't be afraid to iterate, and also be sure and check your work. Oftentimes Copilot is, especially with data, is taking its best approximation of what it's asking you, of what you're asking it. And so if if what I see or what I receive isn't exactly what I'm looking for, then what I can do is I can look at that and get a more accurate formula. Now you can see this formula is much more accurate because the values are actually representing percent increases, percent decreases, and I get a better result out of that. Don't be afraid to iterate. Copilot is like talking to a person. Sometimes the response you get is going to be exactly what you want. Sometimes it might require you to reiterate a little bit further. All right. Now, that's a common formula, a common kind of analysis formula that we'll see. You can see it has uses in things beyond this: sales analysis, budget tracking, web traffic monitoring, all kinds of other things. All right. One of my favorites. Imagine you've just received a contact list from 3 different departments. Some of the names are all caps, others are lowercase, phone numbers are in every format imaginable, some emails are missing or have typos, and your manager comes to you and says, I need this list cleaned up and ready for our new CRM system by lunch. You are probably sitting there thinking, this is going to take me an absurd amount of time because I've got this. Okay. How do I get Copilot to clean that up for me? Well, I can give it a prompt. Clean and format this data in the table name contacts, standardize capitalization for names and cities, remove extra spaces, format the phone numbers in this format, and highlight any missing email addresses. I don't have to tell it what all those things are because of the language model. It already understands that. So I can copy that, drop that into my spreadsheet. All right, here's my contacts table, paste that in, and we'll let that run. While that's running, like I said, I'll show you what I can expect from the results of this. One back up. All right. That it will recognize what the format of that data was, and it'll put it into a logical format that looks like this. Now my names are going to be all cleaned up. My phone numbers will be clean. My emails will be in a normal format. If there's a missing email, I'll get that missing email established there. And then I'm able to then insert that data or put that data into my table, into my worksheet. So regardless of what formats your data cleaning needs to be, regardless of what that looks like structurally for you, I'll insert that into a new sheet. And you can see from here, now I've got clean data. Okay. All that, I went from this to this in one prompt. How long did it take me to clean that manually? How long would it take me to define the rules for that? This is where we're saving that time. Okay. All right. So evaluating information, doing data cleanup. Third one is the analysis piece. Okay. You're a business analyst. Yep, last quarter sales dropped unexpectedly, and your leadership comes to you and says, what happened? What product should we focus on to turn things around? So I'll have a prompt that says, look at the sales data. Look at the data in the sales table. What are my top performing products? What are my sales trends? Are there any seasonal patterns? Where are the key insights? Can you create a chart to visualize that so that I can make my recommendations to our staff or to our team? All right. So back in our spreadsheet, here's my sales data. Drop in my prompt. And once again, while that's running, I'll roll back up here and show you what I'm going to get from that. I'll get my top performing products. So for me, this WAN controller is top, then my firewall, then my switch. I'll get some monthly data. I'll have to do a little bit of data cleanup because I wasn't able to sort the month data, but I'm able to get those kind of analytics based on what I'm asking or what the prompt defines for me. So if I need to then further refine that, if I need to tell it, hey, create a table from this, or hey, create a bar chart from that. If I don't get the exact result I'm looking for, it's just another iteration in the process. So These analytic pieces can take a little while to run. That's why I sort of pre-staged a little bit of it. All right. One other thing I wanted to show you real quick. Some people have asked or will often ask me, what's the difference between using Copilot in Excel or using the M365 Copilot application or the Copilot app that I have? Well, this is the same prompt I ran on the same data. Okay. So same prompt, same data. I uploaded the spreadsheet, slightly different results, give me a little more on the graphical side, but you should get very similar results. The Copilot that lives in Excel is kind of focused on Excel. The M365 Copilot has a little broader scope. But you see, it still identifies the same products, still shows me, or in this case, gives me more visuals, my monthly sales trends, my top 10 products, my monthly trends, my seasonal averages. I could see all of that. But all of this is coming out of very simple analytic prompting. The key is to make sure we hit those four elements with goal, context, sources, expectations. Every one of the prompts we've shown has those things built into it. All right. So this is just a small sample. This is just a taste of what you can see or what you have available with leveraging Copilot in Excel. Um, Being able to format data into legible charts, being able to analyze the construction of a formula, being able to look at data and have Copilot intuitively understand what terminology means. I didn't have to define for it what monthly was. It knows what months are. I didn't have to define for it what sales figures are. If there's a column called sales, it can infer that. That's the real strength of using something like Copilot, is it has an artificial intelligence. It has an understanding of the things that we want to do and ways for us to accomplish that. All right. Awesome. So what's next? Well, we're going to be doing a couple more of these seminars. We're going to do one on the 13th regarding just like this, but we're talking about Outlook. And then we'll do one on November 19th for Teams. There's a link here for you to browse some of the Copilot courses that the folks here at New Horizons have. And this session is recorded. If you found this valuable, share the recording. The idea is for everyone to be able to accomplish more and to be able to accomplish more using AI like Copilot. So that's my little bit. I'm excited to see what you have. I encourage you, if you've got a really cool prompt that you use in Excel, throw it in the chat. Share it with everyone. The goal of these sessions is not just to hear from me, but to hear from everybody. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mariela, and I'm here. I'll stick around and answer any questions people might have.
Absolutely, Albert. Yeah, we had a couple come in. I wanted
Sure.
to take a second to thank our amazing audience. They have been throwing in tips and feedback about how amazing this stuff is. So, shout
Mhm.
out to our amazing audience. But here, let me start off with the first question we got in.
Sure.
I would like Copilot to analyze data and find me future trends based on the current data set. Is that
Hmm.
something Copilot can do? I think you kind of showcased that with that
Yeah.
business analysis
Hmm.
prompt.
100%. Yeah. As long as you have clearly defined columns. The one thing that I tell people that you may have to do a little cleanup work is whatever you define in your prompt, try to make it match as close to how that data is defined in your worksheet. So if you have if you're using sales, make sure it's called sales, not revenue, unless you mean revenue. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that the terminology that you're using is close, because whenever, like I said, whenever we give something and have Copilot have to try to make a decision, then we have a chance that maybe it might not land exactly where we want the first time. So that would be my suggestion for that.
Excellent. Alrighty, we have a couple more,
Hmm.
and some of them have to do with, I think, some of the examples that you're showing. So we
Yeah,
might call back to some of those.
sure.
Does the data have to have the year and month columns, or can Copilot extrapolate that from the month, date, year column?
Oh, excellent. No, it doesn't have to have a defined, if you have a common date format, then you can just tell it based on month show me a value. And if you have like a month slash day slash year in a column, if in a column labeled date, it can extrapolate what the month is from that. Once again, more information is always better. If you tell it, take that data from the sales date column or from the transaction date column, which is in the format of month, day, year, you shouldn't have, you don't have to necessarily do that. But if you provide that kind of information, you're just, once again, helping the accuracy of the prompt. But 100%, it understands that if I put 10, 23, 25, that means that could mean month, day, year, or that would mean month, day, year in this context. Where we get into some challenges is if we use like European date formats, or we're trying to bring those kind of things in. Much like I did with telling it how to format a phone number, I might want to tell it how my month, day, year is formatted if I'm actually asking it to extrapolate it from a larger date column.
Fantastic. That's such good insight to have when you're
Sure.
crafting these prompts.
Hmm.
Alrighty, we have a couple more I think we can get to.
Sure.
Can Copilot perform analysis that is not standard in Excel? For example, can it create a statistical process control chart given the raw data in a spreadsheet?
Okay. Copilot can, if Copilot doesn't know intuitively what it is, you can give it a model for what you want. So if there's an example of what you want, you could always feed that to Copilot. So if you had an example of that process or that model, and you said, okay, this is, here's a, you can even have it in another spreadsheet. You could say, okay, I want you to look at this spreadsheet and then do an analysis like what was done in this spreadsheet. It's able to do that kind of comparative analysis and draw and then make a conclusion based on the data that you have in the current worksheet. That may require a couple of more iterations for you to get it right, because now you're asking it to interpret. But if you provide examples to Copilot, it will then use those examples in what it's trying to generate for you as output.
Amazing. Alrighty, and I will limit this to yeah, let's cut this off since it's already 12:30. Um, when you can you show the prompt again for the cleanup of data? I know that
Oh yeah,
someone asked about that also in the chat, so we had a couple of people ask about that. Hopefully we can, yeah, showcase that specific
there we go.
problem.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there you are. That's it. This was the one I used for that. And I'll tell you what, I'll copy that, and I'll put it into the chat. And also, we're going to share this presentation, and all the prompts we used, all the things in the presentation will be available there. But I will happily copy that one into the chat for you all.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, while Albert does that, I did want to close out and thank our amazing audience for joining us. And thank you so much, Albert, for all this really fantastic info.
You're
And
welcome.
if you need any additional information on this topic, please do not be afraid to visit us at newhorizons.com. And if you wanted to learn a little bit more about uh, the two upcoming Copilot sessions that Albert will also be joining us for, I went ahead and threw that link back in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining us. And yeah, we will see you in those next two sessions. But have a fantastic rest of your week. And thanks again, Albert. Oh, he's on mute, but he's saying bye. All righty. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon.